is trying to be understanding without being super condescending of sexual assault survivors, which is not a light topic at all, but it is interesting coming from someone like Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski famously raped a woman, raped a girl.
Woman's a really, woman's not the right term there.
Yeah, by all accounts, and has been skirting the law for years about it. As well, he was a famous, when he was married to his wife, he was a womanizer, and he didn't treat his wife well at all. He was very emotionally and perhaps physically abusive.
Well, and this kind of goes into The Shining is a great depiction of alcoholism, written by someone in the throes of alcoholism.
As well, the victimhood that comes with that.
Yeah, so even though he was the perpetrator of those horrors against his own family, it doesn't excuse it, and I want to be very clear about that. I think this kind of fits into that same mold of, here's someone who wrote or who made a movie that is one of the best depictions I've seen about, being a sexual assault survivor and what that does to someone, and just, I think, depression based on feeling like the men in someone's life are out to get them. Made by someone who, under any circumstances, was one of the scary men in women's lives.
Definitely. So, and I agree with you that there might be some sort of introspection happening, which would be actually more forgivable. This was obviously made before he ever perpetrated those acts or was accused of perpetrating those acts. But he was still, by all accounts, a womanizer and just didn't treat women all that well. So I'm curious if this was him making a horror movie wherein he was unpacking his own anxieties about how he was treating women, which is like a very friendly reading of the movie. Because the movie itself would seem to indicate, like, it's not always like a great way to do this, but I would call this a feminist horror movie because of how much sympathy it has for the assaulted and how it's not exploitive of her really at all.
Well, it's not just sympathy; it's entirely from her perspective,
and it only breaks that perspective during the moments where she's lashing out in violence and breaking that sort of social circle and starting to that effect. She's also goddamn gorgeous. That is sort of a curse for her because it's inviting unwanted attention. She has this long, luxurious, gorgeous blonde hair that she uses as sort of a cover, and it sort of reminded me of this idea that I recently heard from someone that was talking about burqas, niqabs, and hijabs from the other side of the equation. We typically think of them as tools of oppression of women in Islamic countries. And a lot of women have argued that wear the niqab and the hijab, or one or the other, it's actually a tool of liberation because they can walk freely on the streets without being seen as objects to be, marked off as parts. Like she has a pretty face, she has pretty lips, she has, a nice ass. Like it can be recontextualized as something that wherein women can use that to not be objectified by men. And I was getting those flashes of that idea that I heard a while ago watching this movie because, her blonde hair is just, covering up her face and she's, trying to avoid eye contact with men because it's both, maybe from a sense of deep-seated shame, but also from, a sense of wanting to protect herself from being exploited and harmed by these men. She's being constantly pushed forward by friends, just like the men are being... Or friend... Actually, no. Her sister and her friend Bridget both push her to, isn't it fun to date? And you should go, pursue
Well, yeah, her friend tells that great... maybe not great story, but her friend tells that story about going to the movies with her date, and they're laughing, and then, she eventually turns to the idea, but it is true that there's almost two elements of horror at work here. There's the major one, which is that all the men in her lives are predators or out to get something from her, and she is kind of stuck sleepwalking through the world and trying to escape inside herself. But then there's the other horror, which is that the people that are closest to you don't recognize, besides just, hey, something wrong with you, that there's something wrong. There's clearly something beyond just, hey, are you feeling all right today? Carol is walking around in almost like a waking coma. Her eyes express no emotion for the most part. Even when she murders her wannabe suitor, the eyes are dead, and she does a great job of portraying that. But there's something majorly wrong in the fact that it's not just that she's besieged by men, but her attempts to cry for help for the people that she's closest with get completely over.